Hi folks, welcome to Creepy Puppets Presents. I'm your humble puppeteer, Tommy, and I do videos on philosophy and theology, especially when those philosophical issues appear in popular media. So we've done a few videos now about what good autism representation would look like in media, and why most media portrayals of autism fail. Typically, the best autistic characters in contemporary media, like Phoebe Spangler from Ghostbusters Afterlife or Marcy Wu from Amphibia, are just autistic coded, while narratives around confirmed autistic characters either center on or reduce the character to their autism. I posited Smackle from Disney's Girl Meets World was possibly the best autism representation I had seen thus far, in that her autism has been confirmed on screen, and it informs her character, but she isn't reduced to just being the autistic girl. I know we're doing a month of Scooby-Doo because it's fall and Scooby-Doo is my pumpkin spice, and we're still going to do that on my normal release schedule, but I may have found the best autism representation in media I've seen yet, so we're going to talk about it this week, a week earlier than my usual upload. I had not seen any of Netflix's hit dramedy Cobra Kai until my nephew Puppy Dog-eyed me into watching it last week because it's his favorite show. And you know what? It's possibly the best show on Netflix. Arguably even better than Stranger Things. And Cobra Kai's Steve is pretty clearly Hawk, played by Jacob Bertrand of Disney's Kirby Buckets fame. In Season 1, Episode 6, Hawk tells Johnny, the main character, that
the doctor said I could be on the spectrum,
which counts as on-screen diagnosis confirmation in my book. So let's quickly recap my experience with the Karate Kid franchise before going into the autisticness of Hawk's character. Part 1, my involvement with the martial arts. I think I've been reasonably good at the few martial arts I've tried. I'm no master fighter, but I did kendo in undergrad and I'm fencing épée now. I enjoy sparring, but not punching, hence the swords. And I've also trained extensively in various forms of meditation and spiritual martial arts, which should definitely be a topic of its own in the future. But I did do karate when I was in elementary school. Like Hawk, I was bullied, though mostly in second grade. Being both fat and autistic did not help my popularity, but after that I was much taller than those kids, and I think the little bastards were scared to say anything like that to my face. By high school I was 6'2", and between junior and senior year I could machine press 210 pounds, like 3 sets of 12, not 1 rep max. I certainly cannot do that today. Anyway, I was recommended starting karate around that time, second grade, and it lasted only a few months, but I do remember some stuff. I can still do that wax on, wax off block, and I think I learned to read eyes and body language there too. My sensei recommended I watch The Karate Kid, and that's how arguably the greatest coming-of-age story of the 80s entered my life. Part 2, The Karate Kid franchise summarized. So if you've never seen it, The Karate Kid follows Ralph Macchio as Danny LaRusso, an Italian kid from Newark, and that's how you say it if you're from there, who moves to the San Fernando Valley and finds himself bullied by Johnny Lawrence, a regional champion martial artist from the aggressive Cobra Kai dojo, after Danny hooks up with Johnny's ex. Danny's ass is saved from a vicious beating by his apartment's handyman, Mr. Miyagi. Circumstances cause Miyagi to teach Danny authentic Okinawan karate while they form a father-son bond. Mr. Miyagi was played by the brilliant comedian and comic actor Noriyuki Pat Morita, who got an Oscar nomination for his dramatic turn in this role. I'll link to some of Pat's stand-up from the 60s if you don't believe that he was a stand-up comic. But warning, if you find George Carlin offensive, you probably won't like this either. So Johnny and Danny meet up in the final round of the All-Valley Karate Tournament, and Danny wins using a crane kick to Johnny's face. It's great, go and watch it. There are sequels and a remake, and actually Karate Kid 2 is probably my favorite movie in the franchise, but those shenanigans are mostly irrelevant to the story. So Cobra Kai picks up some 30 years later, with down on his luck Johnny becoming the Mr. Miyagi to a group of bullied kids, one of whom is Hawk, relaunching the Tang Soo Do-influenced Cobra Kai School of Karate. Part 3, Hawk's Character Arc. We first meet Eli Lip Moskowitz as a member of a group of bullied teens, the Johnny Miyagis. He was born with a cleft lip and had surgery to close it, which leaves him with a pretty vicious facial scar. In the scene where Hawk mentions that he's potentially on the spectrum, Johnny tells him he needs to, quote, flip the script. The scene reminds me an awful lot of the speech that Tyrion gives to Jon Snow in the Game of Thrones Season 1 episode, Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things. Anyway, the next day, Hawk comes back with a new wardrobe and a dyed mohawk haircut, where he gets the nickname Hawk. Hawk's one of the best Cobra Kai students, but eventually starts to develop into a bully, a journey he completes under the toxic influence of the Karate Kid franchise's main villain, Sensei John Kreese. Hawk the bully beats one of his former bullies into a bloody unconsciousness, and basically intimidates another of his former bullies into being his lieutenant. The depth of Hawk's moral failure occurs when he puts his former best friend Dimitri in an armbar and breaks Dimitri's arm out of revenge. Hawk takes part in an assault on Danny LaRusso's daughter in the LaRusso family home. But as Hawk sees his goons about to break Dimitri's arm for the second time, he has a change of heart and saves Dimitri. After this, Hawk begins a 2-season-long redemption arc that sees him leave Kreese and join Danny's dojo, slowly making amends to all the people he's hurt, and emerges as the All-Valley Tournament Men's Division champion at the end of Season 4. Hawk's character is certainly not a reduction to his might-be-on-the-spectrum autism. But I can hear someone out there arguing autism doesn't inform Hawk's character at all. One might argue there's no obvious autistic coding in Hawk's character. After all, it's Miguel who seems to have the most issues with social cues, and Hawk would have to be pretty good at sarcasm to be Dimitri's best friend because Dimitri speaks almost entirely in sarcasm. Well, there are some less obvious autistic codings to Hawk's character worthy of discussing. Part 4. How Hawk's autism informs his character. First, let me answer my imaginary opponent's objections. We ultimately don't know how well Eli understood social cues before assuming the Hawk identity because that happens not very long into the story and we don't get much of him before that. What I can say about after, though, given Hawk's personality from immense personal experience, is that being an asshole is a very effective masking technique.
There's a very thin line between, is he on the autism spectrum or is he just like a bitchy queen, you know?
Masking for the uninitiated is the practice of hiding autistic behaviors to protect oneself, and acting like one doesn't care about social cues can obscure one's not getting social cues. As somebody who probably has an undiagnosed mild case of antisocial personality disorder, I'm not pretending not to care. I actively struggle to care, and that has gotten me out of more than a few social faux pas. Turning to Hawk's understanding sarcasm, the idea that autistic people don't understand sarcasm is mostly a myth. According to this meta-study by Colin Dodze and colleagues 2018, people with language disabilities, which are more common in autistic people, struggle to understand sarcasm. When matched with neurotypicals of the same language ability, autistic people are not statistically significantly worse at understanding sarcasm than neurotypicals. This is consistent with a lot of my own personal experiences in the autistic community. Like, of my autistic friend group, only one of us really deals with sarcasm issues, so when he's not around, we use sarcasm all the time with each other. But there is one very autistic aspect of Hawk's character, and it plays a major role in the plot, or what passes for a plot in the show. So Hawk was a bedwetter into his early teens, a fact Dimitri deliberately exposes in front of everyone at a party after he and Hawk have a verbal argument. This act feeds Hawk's growing hatred of Dimitri and accelerates his corruption at the hands of Kreese. Bedwetting, or enuresis, and incontinence generally, are common problems autistic people face, as autistic people often have lower levels of interoception, which is the ability to perceive the inside of one's own body. Autistic people literally struggle to feel when we have to go to the bathroom. We talked a few weeks ago about the Chris Chan trial, and Chris Chan has been very public, many would say far too public, about her struggles with fecal incontinence. I had bedwetting issues myself until about the same age, and even now, I often go from not having to pee to having to pee right now, without anything in between, 0 to 60 in under a second, right? I usually rely on not drinking too late and scheduling mandatory bathroom breaks, which is a frequent tactic for people with sensory processing disorders. This is a source of trauma for many autistic people, myself included, because ABA therapists will try and fail miserably, because it's physiological, to cure bedwetting with usually their token economy schemes, leading to a lot of body shame issues for ABA survivors. Part 5, Conclusions. So we've been developing a 3-pronged model for what constitutes good autism representation. 1, on-screen confirmation that a character is autistic. 2, autism informs the character of the character. But 3, the character isn't centered on or reduced to their autism. It would help if the character is played by an autistic actor, but that's neither necessary nor sufficient. Cobra Kai's Hawk is probably the best character on the show, and he checks all of these boxes. We get a kind of confirmation of his autism. His struggle with bedwetting, a common issue for autistic people, played a major role in his character arc, but that character arc is definitely way more than just, quote, the autistic one. This is all the more impressive given Netflix was responsible for the worst representation of autism of all time until Amazon said, hold my beer. I hope this series continues to be as good as it is now, and I hope Hawk can serve as a template for good autism representation to come. Part 6, Miscellaneous Thoughts on Cobra Kai. So here's a bunch of random thoughts I had on the show that don't really fit in with the rest of this, but I wanted to say them anyway. So the plot of Cobra Kai doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I don't really care because the plot mostly just exists to fuel interesting character interactions. The comedy's pretty solid, especially Chozen in Season 5. I think my biggest laughs came from stuff he said or did, which is kind of ironic, given his character in Karate Kid 2. I love Terry Silver. He might be my actual favorite character in this show. Most people have pointed out how unrealistic the fighting is, since both Okinawan Karate and Tang Soo Do, what Cobra Kai style is based on, usually lose to Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and MMA is basically both Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu together. And MMA dojos are widely available. But I think we'd lose some charm if either Johnny or Danny abandoned their respective styles for MMA. It's just an altogether different beast, I think. One thing that really shocked me for a show that centers so much on bullied teens is how little LGBT representation there is on this show. Hawk's girlfriend is bisexual, and that's about it. None of the main characters are confirmed as queer yet, and especially not the fighters, which is some kind of weird heteronormative idea that only straight people can fight, I think. But I imagine that we might get some more of that as the show improves and gets better. Overall, I really enjoyed my experience watching the show and seeing something of myself reflected in Hawk. That's all for today, friends. Sayonara!